what up? Today I'm going to be talking about what I read in July, which were all of these books. For the month of July, it's like August 4th now. And then at the end I'm going to talk about what I'm currently reading and kind of start getting on that. I kind of like reflecting on how many books I've read each month, especially now that I've been reading a lot more this year. I've already broken my record for most books read in 1 year, and I'll probably actually hit 52 books this year, which I was planning on getting to in a few years. I had read 26 books in a year, and then this year was going to be 30, and then next year was going to be 40, and then the year after that I was going to try to get 52, but with everything going on I haven't worked in months, so I've been doing nothing but reading, and now I've already read 30 books, so getting through it, getting on. And so with the first book I finished, I'm not even really sure what order I finished these in, but I'm going to be talking about the third Brandon Sanderson Mistborn book. And of course, like all my videos, none of these are going to have spoilers in it. I want to get you to read, and I'm just going to talk about the books that I like, and hopefully you'll end up picking them up. But I'm not going to go too into detail on this one. I plan on doing a whole video on the trilogy. It's called the Mistborn Trilogy. If you aren't into fantasy, Brandon Sanderson's one of the biggest names of modern fantasy writers, and everyone suggests starting the Mistborn Trilogy for a good start with him. I've read the whole Mistborn Trilogy, the Wax and Wayne Trilogy, and I've read Way of Kings, and I plan on getting to Oathbringer here soon. But yeah, so I give that a 5 out of 5. I thought it was a really good trilogy. I thought it was a good ending. I think I liked the third one more, which hardly ever happens. Each one kind of progressed. The first one was kind of like a heist story, and the second one was like political, and this one was more like, I don't know, world scope. But yeah, so it was my favorite out of the three, and I gave it a 5 out of 5. And then I also finished the third Wax and Wayne, which is the second trilogy of Mistborn, which I really enjoyed. I also gave it a 5 out of 5. I think I actually enjoyed the second trilogy more than the first, mainly because I just like the world and enjoyed, like, I don't know, I'm a big sucker for like steampunk, and it doesn't seem like too many people are, but I really like steampunk, and I thought it was really cool to see the magic system progress, because Brandon Sanderson's known for his really elaborate magic systems and his world building. He's not the best writer. I don't really necessarily like his writing style that much. I don't, but I mean, just for the ideas and how he explains them, he definitely gets better as he goes on. I could see the progression. The Way of Kings is, I feel like, way better, and so is like the third, the third Wax and Wayne, because those are some of his more recent ones. Way of Kings was written in 2010. Bands of Mourning was written in 2016, I believe. So he definitely like progresses, and I like his newer stuff, writing style wise, better. But that's just me. I'm kind of picky for that type of stuff. Kind of continuing on the fantasy route, I also read Watchmen. This year is the first year I've actually read a graphic novel ever. I think I've got a free app on my phone called like Comixology or something like that, and you're able to like read a bunch of books for free on your phone. And I'm not much of a phone reader, but with graphic novels and comics, I actually really enjoyed it. And so I read through a few of those, and that kind of got me looking into more. And I really liked the Watchmen movie. I haven't watched the TV series yet, but so I ended up getting this, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a 5 out of 5 for so long, and then around like, it's kind of in like 4 parts, I think, and like the third part kind of drug for me, because there was a whole side story that was also into which was also in the director's cut of the movie, which I felt like could have been cut out, which is probably why it was cut out in the normal version of the movie. But it was just felt like it was dragging, and I like didn't care about it at all because it honestly didn't matter that much in the end. It was just something that was added to the story, but there was so much of it, so I ended up just like kind of skimming over those parts and skipping over it, which I hate doing in any book. But since I had to do that, or I felt like I had to, that's the reason I gave it a 4 out of 5. But Alan Moore is pretty much the king of graphic novel writing. He also wrote V for Vendetta, which I plan on reading here soon. I actually have a copy of that as well, but I kind of got burned out on the whole comics and graphic novels. I read a bunch really quickly, but so I'm going to take a break on that stuff. But getting to literature, I also read. Here, I'll talk about this other one first. I also read Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, which, if you're ever interested in James Baldwin, this is always the book that people suggest getting into him. And I liked it. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I think it's because it was so hyped. Everyone's always like, I get a lot of suggestions on Reddit, and I just go through the threads and all the comments, and everyone's like, this book is so amazing, I love it. It's like one of the best books of all time and everything. So I think I was just a little hyped for it, and which I thought it was good. It was definitely a good story. It was like one of the foundations of LGBTQ plus literature, and it's really a staple. And I've been getting into some of that. I read Call Me by Your Name as well, like a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed that as well. So I kind of started getting into that. But yeah, it was good. It's set in Paris in like the 1950s, and he's writing in the perspective of like a Swedish white man, which James Baldwin is black, if you didn't know. And so I kind of had a hard time. Like I kept on. There was like no like racial issues whatsoever, which is what he's kind of known for. He's really a huge political figure, especially in the civil rights movement. And I honestly was surprised that I'd never read a full book by him. I'd taken a lot of racial philosophy classes in college, and blues and jazz literature classes and all this stuff. Like most of the stuff I learned in my undergrad for English was African American literature, and I'd read some plays by him, and I'd learned a lot about him, but I'd never actually read a book, and so it kind of surprised me when I was going through it, and I was like, oh, I actually haven't read anything by him. But definitely, you know, a great writer, very well spoken, very smart. It's a very good story, but it's really depressing as well. So get ready for a sad one if you're going to get into it. But I definitely suggest it. I just was a little disappointed, I guess, because so many people were so into it. And I guess that's the same way with this next one coming in, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which I absolutely love this copy. I actually borrowed this from a friend. So unfortunately, I don't get to keep it, and I wasn't able to write in it. But there's all these awesome pictures. I'm not sure if I'll have to flip through one of those copies that has the movie poster on, because it seems like those are the only copies around. If I can find one. Oh yeah, here's a picture. There's all this really cool art all the way through it, and I really like. But I also gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I liked it. I love Hunter S. Thompson's writing style. I read Rum Diary, which is one of my favorite books of all time now. Previously this year, and then I immediately read Kingdom of Fear, and I couldn't remember the last time that I'd read an author and I was like rushing to get into another book that he'd written. But yeah, unfortunately, which I had heard from a few people online, that they did like Rum Diary more than Fear and Loathing, and I just honestly didn't think that was going to be the case, but turns out I like Rum Diary more than Fear and Loathing. So I definitely suggest both those. His other book, Kingdom of Fear, which is a lot more nonfiction, and this was, you know, nonfiction. I mean, it's probably, some of it's probably fictionalized, but I feel like a lot of it is personal experience. And Rum Diary was completely fiction. So I think I just prefer his fiction writing, which he doesn't have too much of. He's known for gonzo journalism and nonfiction and writing about real life, but still one of my favorite authors of all time. I definitely want to get into more of his stuff. I wouldn't doubt it if I eventually read everything he's written. That's how much I enjoyed him, and he's just a very interesting character. And he was also one of those people that I was surprised that I had never read any of his stuff, because he's just one of those names that you always hear of. I had a Fear and Loathing poster in my house in college, and I watched the movie, we loved it, and I just never got around to his writing. But I also suggest that as well, but I would suggest Rum Diary over that if you hadn't got into him yet. And then lastly, I finally read Tolstoy, which I've never read before. It's The Death of Ivan Lynch. I've had this copy for so long, and I finally got to it, and then I never realized it said "and other stories." And so it turns out this was only like a 60-page novella, I guess. It's kind of like in the middle of a short story and a novella, but I kind of consider it a novella just because it's not that short. It was about 60 pages, and like the title, it's pretty straightforward. It's about the death of a man, and it's about how his relationship with his family as he's going through it, and like how he's going through it with himself and coming to terms with that. He's 45, so he's not old and he's not young, but kind of right in the middle. And he's never really thought about it. It just kind of came really abrupt. He just fell sick, and all of a sudden that sickness got infected more and more, and then there was just nothing they could do. And it's just about him having that experience. And honestly, like, you don't really... In stories, people die all the time. I mean, everyone has to die eventually, so it's always a part of a story, but no one really writes about that minute by minute, day by day experiences of what that's like till the very end. And so it was a very interesting story, and I really want to get into some more Russian literature here soon. I know I have Lolita coming up, which is a must-read for anybody that's into literature. I definitely want to get into more Tolstoy, but his other works are way longer, so if I can find another short one of his soon, I'll read it, but I'm not really trying to get into anything that thick, especially on the literature side. If I did, I would definitely have to use an audiobook for it, or I'd never finish it. But yeah, so that's what I read in July. I suggest all of those. Got a couple of 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5s. And then what I'm currently reading right now, which I think will all be 5 out of 5s, which hardly ever happens. I usually read about 4 or 5 books at the same time, and then just read a little bit of them every day, and then usually by the end of the month, I've read like 5 or 6 books. So it's kind of exciting because I finish them all almost around the same time, so all of a sudden I'll finish 3 books, and I'm like, get a boost of energy, and I'll jump back into 3 more, and then it'll be a month until I finish them. But so what I'm reading, I actually bought this huge, can't really see it actually because it's on the way, this collection of Western philosophy. It's hard to see over here. It's like 4 books. It's missing the middle one, which I've actually already ordered online, but I found all 4 of these at the used bookstore near my place, and they're like $8 a piece, and they're like pretty much a full comprehension. Is it comprehension? Full, what's the word? Full span of Western philosophy, which I got a minor in philosophy in college, but I didn't ever really, I read a lot more like modern, all my classes were like modern philosophy or like futuristic philosophy about like AI and like sci-fi type of stuff, but I never really got too into like ancient philosophy besides, the main people, but even then I never really read the work. So this is really nice. So far I'm really enjoying it. The writing is great. I plan on reading like just 2 sections a day and then going from there, and hopefully eventually I'll get done with this. But right now. I'm really enjoying it. I haven't read philosophy in a long time, and I've forgotten how much I like it. And there was a reason I got a minor in it. So, and then another book that I can't stop reading right now is The Angel's Game by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I read Shadow of the Wind when I was a freshman in college and didn't necessarily like it that much. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but I listened to it on audiobook while I was working. At the time, I was like unloading semi trucks at Walmart, and so I could just listen to music for 8 hours every single day, and I eventually got into audiobooks. But coming to find out, that was my first touch with magical realism, and I wasn't necessarily ready for it, or I didn't really even know what that was. I wasn't an English major at that time, so I hadn't really read too much literature, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So it has a lot of literary elements all mixed into one, and it's honestly great. It's a gothic Barcelonian murder mystery with the devil and angels involved, and it's also super mysterious and with magical realism elements. Like, it kind of has a little bit of everything, and so far I'm enjoying it way more than The Shadow of the Wind. But I also read that, I don't know how long it's been now, 6 or 7 years ago, so I'm definitely going to reread it. And I plan on finishing the rest of the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. That's the series name. It's 4 of them, but you can read them in any order. And so it's about this labyrinth of books, and the books themselves are also a labyrinth because you can read them in any order. So I think that's very cool. But also, what I'm reading right now is the second Dark Tower book. I finished the first Dark Tower earlier this year, and I also gave it a 4 out of 5. I wasn't that crazy about it. I even might have given it a 3 out of 5, but and that was the second time I had tried reading it. The first time I tried reading it early in college, I put it down because that was the first Stephen King I had ever read, and I didn't really like it at all. But I finally picked it back up, pushed through it, because I kept on hearing it was like one of his magnum opus on some people's point of views, and like one of the best fantasy series. And so I pushed through that, which it kind of just felt like a prologue for this one. And I'm 100 pages into this one, and I'm already enjoying it way more than the first one. And I've heard this one and the third one are the best. But I'm not going to get too much into that. I'll eventually do videos over those as well. But and then I'm also a classic fantasy, and I absolutely love this cover as well. I got this at the used bookstore by my house. There's a couple of them that I like to go check out. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. But Earthsea, it's a trilogy that has some continuations, I believe, but it's also a fantasy classic. I was supposed to read this in college because I took a fantasy fiction class, but I ended up failing it and not reading anything. So getting back to that, Ursula Le Guin is one of my friend's favorite authors, and I finally got to her. I'm about a third of the way through. Kind of got stuck because I got busy with these other ones, but I'll get to it and finish it soon. I want to pick up the second First Law book by Joe Abercrombie here soon, which is so far amazing, and I hear it just gets better. But yeah, so The Wizard of Earthsea is a little just kind of like your traditional wizard story that goes to school and kind of becomes the master. He's like the Dragonborn, the chosen one type storyline tropes, but I'm not a big fan of that. But I'm looking past it. I like everything else about it so far, and I also have to look at it in the perspective of it being from the 1971 was when it was published, and then originally published, and so it was new at that time, and so yeah, I'm just getting to it. But that's what I've read in July and currently reading. If you're still listening to me, thanks for bearing with me. But until next time, peace.